Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I am back in California. Long weekends are the best. A couple things first. Yes, I got a haircut. It's a bit frizzy, but, it's humid outside. And second of all, I'm kind of losing my voice, and I have to film 2 videos today, so just be warned, it might get a little like this sooner or later. But, despite all of that, today we are reviewing Meddling Kids. I have a lot to say about this book, not much of it good. So, with that all being said, let's dive on in. Meddling Kids is a sort of Scooby-Doo Lovecraftian retelling. The summer detective program, years ago they broke up after their last case. They all knew something went wrong, and none of them were willing to admit it. And so none of them went back to their summer vacation place. They all kind of drifted apart. And now years later, after their leader Peter died, and one of them starts seeing the ghost of Peter, they have to come back together and revisit their last case in their old summer vacation home and just see how things have developed since then. It's a really fascinating base of a story. There's a lot of things wrong with it, and I've read a lot of reviews to make sure I'm not the only one seeing this. I read both good and bad, but mostly I focused on the bad because I was struggling to formulate my thoughts. But when I was looking at the good reviews, a lot of people were just really basing their views off of nostalgia. And as a person who doesn't really experience nostalgia that well, I'm just yes, I watched Scooby-Doo growing up. Yes, I enjoyed it. I don't get that oh, it's so great because it's Scooby-Doo. No, this isn't it. And I don't understand why people are so fixated on retelling their favorite stories. Those were great stories. Just go back and read them again. This just didn't work with me. And I feel like a lot of people only liked it because of what it was based off of. So if you get rid of all that, if you don't care that this is Scooby-Doo, if you don't care that this is Lovecraftian, this really just, it's a subpar story at best. And I'm gonna go a lot into my problems, but my main problem, the real thing that ticked me off, and I'm no, this book is just no, is the formatting. It switches between screenwriting and a basic novel telling. There's stage directions in the middle of the book, and just at random points in the scene, it will switch to just purely character's name and their dialogue. And it's just, it doesn't match the flow of the scene. It completely destroys the flow of the chapter, and it does it multiple times for seemingly no reason. And that really was the main thing that bothered me, because every time I was starting to enjoy this book, every time I was getting into the story, into the world, it switched into this screenplay writing, and it just took me out of it. I would have enjoyed this book more than I had if they just stuck to one style of, writing. And even within the novel itself, when they use normal, novel, writing tactics, the writing style itself was not good. It was just the way that the writer chose to express himself, and he just made up completely random words, and there's so many references that I just didn't get. I'm if you are entirely basing your novel off of what someone has experienced beforehand, you cannot sell that novel to the general audience. I did not experience the same thing someone else did, therefore I will not have the same experience. And if it's tied so much to this book, if I didn't have that experience that the author expects me to have, then I will not get this book. I will not enjoy this book. And I didn't. So, yeah, that's my main problem with the book. There's a lot of other problems, but that is my main problem with this book. That is why I have such a hard time enjoying and rating this book, because I just kept getting taken out of the story by things it was just why is this included? So, like I mentioned before, these are different characters than our original Scooby-Doo gang. We have Andy and Carrie and Nate and Peter, and then instead of Scooby-Doo, we have Tom, which is the great-grandson of the dog that went with them on this mission, to the house originally. And it's just I have problems with all the characters. I really do. But interesting, what I mentioned before, Peter died, and then Nate started seeing his ghost, and Nate put himself in the mental hospital because he's hallucinations are bad, and you are not Peter, because Peter is dead. And Peter is but I am Peter. And that question of if Peter was real or not never got answered. We don't know. At some points, it's very clearly a hallucination, but at other points, it's yeah, this is starting to act like what you would expect an actual ghost to act like. And because this book was focused so much on mixing unmasking the villain at the end of the story, and what if the villain was real? it mixed that so much, you don't actually know what to expect. And it bothered me. Like, I get it at some points, it was really cool and really fascinating. It's like, you don't know what's real and what's not. When one of your main characters, you don't know if he's real or not, that's kind of annoying, especially because the characters went through so much and they all promised, like, we're never going to lie to each other again, we're never going to keep secrets. And Nate never tells them that he has the ghost of his best friend standing next to him, giving him advice. And he talks to him sometimes. And they're like, hey, what are you saying? And he's like, oh, nothing. Like, you had the chance to tell them. And they picked you up from a mental hospital. You could have just said, like, they know he's having hallucinations, but they don't know that it's Peter. And I'm just like, you're going back on what you said, and that's so annoying. And they never resolve that in the entire story. And I'm like, that's kind of a spoiler, but also, that's one of my main problems with this book. It doesn't stick to what it says it's going to do. And not even in a good way. Some more on the character relationships. It has very uncomfortable, very awkward lesbian, like, just relationships between the stories. Our two female characters, Andy and Carrie, they're supposed to be the Velma and Daphne of the group. We don't really get a Daphne, like, Andy, she's very much a tomboy. She grew up very much wanting people to recognize her as a male. And, like, it was very weird. Like, she spent so much time, it's like, yes, I'm tough, I'm strong, I have military training, I have anger issues. And then Carrie's, like, supposedly a smart girl, and she's like, I had a degree in biology, but I never was accepted to graduate school, so I just kind of became a bartender. And then they're like, they spend so much time talking about their feelings. It's like, that's the entire middle of the book. And it's, like, really weird and really uncomfortable the way they interact with each other. And it's like, they don't even full off say that. It's like, one of them is attracted to females. She's like, I'm not attracted to females, but I'm attracted to you. Like, what does that mean? I get it. Some people don't know what their sexuality is. It's entirely okay to question and not understand. But if you're writing a book, do a better job at explaining the relationship between two of your main characters, especially if you spend the entire middle section of the book focusing on that relationship. Make it do something. Make it go somewhere. Don't just have them lay next to each other in bed. Like, it was so uncomfortable the way that scene was laid out. It was so bad. Like, it was not good. The pacing of this book, especially in the middle portion that was entirely a relationship, was slow. It was bad. It was so weird. Like, they spend so much of the time just like, we're going on a trip across the country because Andy can't fly because she got, like, sent to jail or something or whatever. And it's just like, they spend so much time just on the road trip, and then they get to the house and they just kind of, like, stand there and they do nothing. And I'm like, with the weird formatting, with the bad writing, with the slow pacing, it was such a hard time to read. I had to get the audiobook from my library to finish this book. It was like, why did I continue to read it? Like, that's my problem with this book. It wasn't enjoyable, but it stuck in my mind. It kept making me want to pick up this book because I didn't even want to know how it ended. It's just like, oh, I want to read this again. I'm like, why did it do that? Like, why does such a badly written book stick with me? Why did it want to make me keep reading? That's like, I wouldn't be so passionate about it if I just DNF'd it. It would just go on my shelf and I would stop thinking about it. But this book made me think about it, and why? Like, that's the annoying part. I don't understand. It wasn't well written. It wasn't well formatted. But I kept wanting to read it. And I honestly can't think of anything good to say about this book, but I didn't stop reading it. Supposedly, this was supposed to be a horror book. A lot of people said it was very atmospheric. A lot of people were like, it's one of the best horror books of whenever this book came out, I think 2017 or whatever. They're like, totally, like, you should vote for this in the next Goodreads Awards. I didn't find this scary. I didn't find this creepy. I barely found this atmospheric. I'm just like, I've read scarier things. This is just playing off of your Lovecraftian Scooby-Doo nostalgia. And now we're gonna go kind of into the ending, so that it's probably spoiler warning, I suppose. I'm not going to say anything specific. So when they first did this case, when they first unmasked the villain, they sent him off and it's like, okay, you be arrested now, but still something lingered with them. Still, they knew something was wrong, something was going on. And that's why they left. That's why they couldn't return to the Sleepy Hollow village. And it's just, it was that trying to figure out what did this guy in the mask do and what did the actual people who are not entirely human do. Like, it's that trying to figure out the difference between reality and fantasy. And then there was also, it's just like, they just kept adding things. And I'm like, what about this thing under the lake? And what about this thing in the lake? And what about the thing in the house? There was like 3 separate problems, plus the guy in the mask going on. And I'm just like, I stopped caring, because at some point they're like, this actually was a red herring. So you added it to the story in the last portion of the book to be a red herring in the last portion of a book for something you reveal in the next chapter. Like, what was even the point of having this in the book? It served no purpose other than to give you a minor spook factor. It was just like, why? Why was this in the book? I don't understand. And then when we get to the actual villain's motivation, it was awful. Like, the actual villain's like, just because. Like, that is not a good motivation, especially when you had the villain written the way they were. And I'm just, that kind of motivation doesn't work. It wasn't, like, they compared it to why do humans split atoms? Not just because, it's like the reason humans split atoms is for knowledge, is for power, it's for the chance to learn something new. This person was just like, I just want to do it because I just want to do it. Like, that is not a good motivation. Do not put that in a book and expect me to be okay with that. They kept adding more and more problems in the last portion, and then the villain motivation was absolutely horrible, and I'm just like, why? Why are there so many red herrings after the mystery got solved? Like, that doesn't make sense. You know who the bad guy is. Why do you keep adding all these things? I'm like, but what about this? And I'm just, And also, again, that whole thing with Peter, it's like, do we know if he's dead? Do we know if, like, he's actually there haunting you? Like, what's the deal with that? Like, really? So yeah, I had a lot of problems with this book, but also it just kept making me want to pick up. It just made me want to keep reading, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why. I just cared, and I'm like, why do I have such strong feelings about this? Normally I would just DNF it and put it on my shelf, but not this time. This time I just wanted to keep reading, and I don't understand. It stuck in my head, and I congratulate the author for that, because that is a very difficult thing for them to do, but not in a good way. I'm just, why? I did give this book 3 stars, and I might lower that to a 2 later on, and just like, after all these bad things I listed, and I'm struggling to find a good thing about this book, it wasn't horrible. Like, it was as clunky and as awkward and as just weird as it was to read. I liked reading it. Like, I liked continuing to pick it up. And I did help with the audiobook, of course. It's a very beautiful cover. And that is about it. But why do I like it? I can't figure that out. I put off doing this review to try and figure that out, and I still haven't done that yet. So maybe in the future, I'll try and express what I'm thinking better in words, because I'm really struggling with that. But for now, I don't know how to finish this. Like, seriously, I want to give you guys more information of why I want to give this book a 3 stars, but I can't. Like, in my heart, I'm like, it wasn't a 2-star book. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but I'm not going to say this is the worst book I've ever read. It's weird, and I don't understand it. So that's really all I have to say. So I guess thank you guys all so much for watching. If you like this video, or have any idea how to help me express my thoughts better, please leave that down in the comment section below. I am so confused. And while you're there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.